Welcome back to the Bhuta Yoga Academy, or welcome if you're new here. In this video, I'm going to share 3 of the things that I think could be holding you back in your progress on the path of yoga. For those who are new here, welcome. I want to introduce myself so you know who I am and where I'm coming from. My name's Grant Difflander. I've been a yoga teacher since 2016, a practitioner since 2014. I live full-time in the mountains of Costa Rica where I study and practice. At this point, I've graduated 36 teachers from the teacher training programs that we run here, as well as facilitated dozens of retreats and transformational experiences for others on the path. I've also authored 2 books. You can check out my recent one. It just got published on Amazon. Yada, yada, yada. But let's get into it. When I first started practicing yoga, I was a weightlifter and a mortgage banker, and my health was actually holding me back from living a life that I felt was the one that I wanted to live. And I found the path of yoga to be really helpful to bringing balance and stability to all of the systems in my body. Specifically, there were a couple things that were big game changers for me. I'm hoping that what I share in this video can kind of shorten the timeline for you, especially if you're someone who's been practicing for some time and you feel like you may be not making the progress that you want. I want to share the big perspective shift that changed the path for me when I started to look at, instead of what I was practicing, how I was practicing, and what I was really trying to achieve on my path. So stick around if you're a practitioner or maybe you're a yoga teacher, and I think that these things could save you some time on your path to becoming a superhuman, badass, spiritual warrior yogi. That is what we're doing, right? Let's get into it. So here's the overview and what I hope that you get out of this video. I'm going to outline 3 of the main topics that we're going to cover, as well as share in each of those topics a couple bullet points. So get out your pen and paper and be ready to take some notes. So here's the overview. Ready? 1, comparison. There's going to be 2 points under comparison, A and B. I noticed that when I was practicing, and I made a commitment to myself to go to the studio every single day to practice at least 1 class. That was how I started my yoga journey back in 2014. And over time, as I was practicing, I started to notice that I was comparing myself to others in the room. I was comparing myself and the depth of my posture, the quality of my posture to other practitioners. This was doing 2 things for me. 1, it was robbing me of the beautiful benefit of the introspection that yoga provides. And 2, it was bringing me away from one of the most important aspects of the path of yoga, which is learning to become more self-aware. So point A and point B under comparison kind of go together. Yeah. A being the aspect that I was forcing and being aggressive with myself in order to go deeper, because I thought that due to my comparison with others, that's what I needed to do to make progress. And then B, losing the quality of introspection. These were 2 things that when I became aware of them, it totally changed the game for me, because then I started to practice yoga with more of a sense of, instead of trying to compare myself to others, or instead of trying to fight for a deeper pose, I started to turn inward and really listen to my body and listen to, what do I need to do to help myself? It sounds so simple, but I was coming to the path of yoga to heal, and I was continuing to perpetuate patterns that were preventing me from actually loving myself, from actually healing. Those were the imbalances that really led me to the path of yoga to begin with. And I think that this is a key part of the journey, the spiritual journey, is just learning to become more self-aware. Learning to use the spiritual path as a tool, not to strengthen and perpetuate old patterns, but to remove those patterns from my psyche, from my consciousness, from my body, so that the energies that were leading me to do those things, those behaviors, started to dissipate. That was a game changer. I started to practice with more self-awareness, with less aggression, with less force. I stopped pursuing the extremity of the posture, right? Like initially there was this feeling like, oh, I needed to do more, or I needed to master the pose. And once that went away, I started to enjoy the practice a lot more. And through the enjoyment of the practice, I actually wanted to do more of it. So that's That's what we would lump under that first category of one, comparison. Number two, not understanding or applying the teachings from the Yoga Sutras. Yoga today has really, unfortunately, become more of a fad and associated with fitness. And I think it's wise to remember that yoga is really, truly a spiritual path, first and foremost. It was designed as a sacred technology to help us become more aware of that ineffable substance that is beneath and behind all things, known as consciousness, which is our true nature. And it's through our access to consciousness that we start to plug into the wellspring of life force, of energy, of creativity, of inspiration. And it's through that access to the consciousness that all of the other things that we're looking for in our life, I believe, start to be nourished. And that really requires an understanding of, well, what is the path of yoga? And looking at the Yoga Sutras and the teachings from the Yoga Sutras help us to really understand what are the principles to look for in the practice as I'm doing the practice to ensure that I'm not just exercising, but that I'm engaging in a spiritual practice. And you might be thinking, yeah, Grant, I already know that. I've been practicing for so many years and da-da-da. And that's true. And I want to encourage you to continue. And I also want to share that for myself, I had the same thought. And it wasn't until I started to really look at the Yoga Sutras and specifically the yamas and the niyamas and start to think about, how do I apply these in my practice? Like on the mat, how do I apply ahimsa, for example? How do I apply satya? These are the first two yamas. You might have already been exposed to these teachings, and I'm revisiting them because they're constantly needing refreshment for me after 11 plus years of daily practice. Ahimsa, for example, so this is A and B on point number 2. We'll look at ahimsa as A, as the sub point to 2. Ahimsa means nonviolence. And going back to what we were saying earlier, forcing an aggression in the practice. For whatever reason, there is a tendency that, at least I have as a human being, to be impatient. And I notice that when I come to my mat and I start to practice, there's like an impatience from my day that I carry with me onto my mat that causes me to rush. You know what I mean? Like there's like a rushing from one posture to the other, or there's a rushing through my breath, or there's a rushing to get to the end of the practice. Never fully sinking in to enjoy the moment, to enjoy that breath, to enjoy that edge of that posture, to enjoy that aspect of my pranayama. I was thinking ahead, future. And that was draining my life force. It was leaking energy. Ahimsa, being nonviolence, is really this idea that we can practice in a way that we bring gentleness to each moment, a lack of aggression, a lack of violence. Because if I'm forcing or I'm rushing, I'm being aggressive, I'm being violent. And the key to that is to notice, what am I thinking about as I'm doing the practice? Because it's very likely that if I'm rushing and I'm impatient, I'm thinking about something other than what's right there in that moment, or I'm trying to avoid feeling something that's right there in that moment. And that avoidance of feeling that thing is causing me to carry that feeling with me and to perpetuate that feeling. You see what I'm saying? So ahimsa, in embodying this principle of ahimsa, helped me to slow down, to practice being more gentle, and ultimately lead to a far more enjoyable practice, a practice that was like a refuge for my life. That helped me to seriously process and alchemize the things in my life that were not working. It helped me to work through in myself the impatience, the aggression, the fear, all of the things that I was avoiding initially. So that's A, ahimsa. And then B, under point number 2, looking at the Yoga Sutras, Satya. And you can extend this out to be C, D, E, F, G if you want to keep going with the yamas and the niyamas, but I'm just giving you this as an example. So point number 2, B under point number 2, Satya means truthfulness. Am I being honest with myself? It sounds so simple, right? It's like, am I being honest with myself? And a lot of times when I was practicing, the noticing how I wasn't being honest with myself, for example, was being in a posture and assuming that there needed to be a deeper posture in order, like, you know, how did honesty show up for me? How did Satya show up for me? And maybe this is an invitation to examine how it might show up for you. As I was practicing, was I really doing what I was capable of, what my body was capable of? Or was I thinking that there was something else I needed to be doing? Like, as an example, let's put that into practicality. Say I'm in a posture, a simple posture, like a seated forward fold. If I was constantly trying to get somewhere further, then I wasn't actually being truthful with myself. Right? Like all of these things, you'll notice that they all sort of interconnect. And that learning to be honest with myself, well, first I had to be not aggressive. I had to slow down. And then I had to just be like, okay, this is actually where I'm at. This is where I'm at today. That was being truthful, and that was being loving with myself. And if I could start to accept where I was at in every moment, then the path of yoga started to unfold. So that was how Satya layered into ahimsa, layered into integrating the Yoga Sutras into the practice, bringing more progress, spiritual progress, which led to greater sense of health and happiness and balance. And now, number 3, not having a clear idea of the view or the map of the spiritual journey. I think that this might be the main one, at least for me, when I got in my awareness that, oh, there's actually somewhere that I'm trying to go on this path. And it's not something that my ego wants, right? And what I mean by that, like the ego thinks that if I achieve the posture, right, to give more examples of what we just talked about, that I'll be happy. That was such bullshit. It wasn't, that's not how it was. It was learning to have the ego take a back seat and to allow the soul to be in the driver's seat and to become more aware of what is the true nature of my being. Not the contents of the mind, not the aspects of my personality that want this, that want that are constantly grasping for pleasure and trying to avoid pain. Shifting my focus to see this is actually a spiritual journey that I'm on, but what does that even mean? Right? I had to really think, what am I trying to do? That is where understanding the map and the view, in the tantric traditions, they see this as a capital V, view, that the view is the most important part. And the reason for that is because if I start at point A and I'm venturing out on my journey, but I don't have a point B to go to, then I might end up in this meandering journey, finding all sorts of cool little pit stops, and it might take me forever to get to point B. If I know what point B is and I'm making a beeline towards it, my journey is then more streamlined. And so understanding the view and the map was really essential to taking the right steps, because it also informed what I was doing in each moment. It helped me understand what those other points that I was just sharing about with comparison with the Yoga Sutras and yamas and the niyamas. It helped me weave those into the path that I was walking. So the map of the territory was essential to the aiming for the highest, I guess you could say. Because the path of yoga is not, I said this before, but it's not just about fitness. It's not about exercise. It's not about having a sexy body. It's about having a clear mind and a pure heart so that we can contemplate on the beauty of creation and enter into an alignment with the beauty of creation by experiencing that beauty of creation inside of us. This is how I think the path of yoga becomes a path of learning to love ourselves and love all of life, to be in service to the totality of the mystery, joyfully engaging and participating in life, not numbing out, not distracting ourselves, not checking out, not running from things, not avoiding feeling things, but learning to open our heart and to present ourselves from a present and embodied state that was and is one of the supreme benefits that I believe that we get by walking the path and understanding where we're trying to go. So that's it for me, everybody. I hope that this has been helpful on your path to becoming a superhuman, badass, spiritual yogi warrior. That is what we're trying to do, right? Be sure to subscribe for more or check out this video here if you want to go deeper with me. Less talk, more walk. Let's go. Peace.